Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nerdy Norwegian show. Today is a very special day because I'm very lucky that today's guest is the English voice of Goku in Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, and Dragon Ball Daima, and Gohan, of course. It's Stephanie Nadolny. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here.
Great to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, of course, we're going to talk about Dragon Ball, but I just wanted to start out. Who is Stephanie Nadolny? Who are you? How would you describe yourself?
Well, I'm a natural-born performer, vocalist, mimic, musical theater type person. I grew up with music in the household, thankfully. Grew up with all kinds of different music from the 50s to the 80s and beyond as I got older. And I always had an affinity for music and voices and anything that the voice can be capable of doing. So that was my fascination from a very, very young age, singing songs, and then getting into school activities, musical theater, choir, show choir. I also had an affinity for dancing. So I did lots of dance as a child, ballet and tap, and got into more of that in drill team and pom-pom type dance squads. We had to move around a lot. I've lived in 4 states, and as a child, that was not easy, especially with the line of work I was going into, because it feels like I had to start all over every time we moved to try to establish some kind of, home base with everything. But so as I got older, I participated in anything from talent shows to special events. Right out of high school, I joined a show band. As I was going to college and started touring with a internationally known show band called Vince Vance and the Valiants, featuring the vivacious vixens of rock and roll, Venus, Violet, and Victoria. And some would come and go, but we all had V names. And so it was very theatrical and visually stimulating. We had choreography, costume changes. So I was well on my way, at the age of 18, 19, into pursuing a career full time in vocal performance. We did a lot of stuff in the studio. We recorded for albums and, backup vocals for various projects. I started working with other bands in the region, and things kind of progressed from there. Started getting into more voice acting opportunities, mostly character voices. That seems to be what I'm best at. A lifetime of making up my own shows growing up, and coming up with different voices was kind of already something I was doing. And I think as I got older, it just kind of became more refined and a little bit more developed with experience. And from there, I got referred to a company called Jimmy Toys, where they would hire people to come in and be the voices of various characters that the soundbite would eventually go into a toy. Mostly singing holiday songs like Christmas songs, Halloween, kid voices, witches, screaming women, monsters and creatures. And so at that point, I started getting a lot more experience with the voice acting. And then voice acting with a singing voice was what I think was even more unique. And I was Helen the Hen for Chuck E. Cheese, the singing voice for one season. Started singing with Brave Combo, a Grammy Award-winning polka band. The leader of that band started writing original music, and he had my voice in mind, so we did an entire album that has yet to be posted anywhere, which is is definitely on us, definitely on my to-do list, because I think it's really good stuff. It just kind of didn't go anywhere because it just wasn't shared. So yeah, that's kind of like in a nutshell, kind of how it all began for me.
Yeah, lifelong performer. Then, as you said, you got into voice acting. And how did you get involved with Dragon Ball? How did that come about?
That was a referral directly from my interactions with Brave Combo and performing with Vince Vance and the Valiants. One of Brave Combo's big fans here locally was actually a director for Dragon Ball Z when the show was being recorded in English in Canada prior to the Funimation dub. I found all all of this later, of course, but he was a big fan of Brave Combo and seemed to be interested in my voice. Asked me if I did character voiceovers, and I said yes. Gave me a card. I gave him my information. Didn't hear anything for probably close to a year. But when the time came for Funimation to, start working on the English dub of Dragon Ball Z, I was contacted for the audition that way. So it was actually kind of sort of through my career as a singer that kind of, crossed over into voiceover.
Yeah.
So I got the audition and auditioned for all the females, not knowing what I was really auditioning for. And before I left the audition, Barry Watson, who was the one who referred me in for the audition, and two other gentlemen that were, I think, in the decisive mode for casting, asked me if I could do the voice of a young boy. I threw one at him randomly, and I was called back and cast as Gohan.
Hey.
Daddy.
Yes, awesome. So when you started playing Gohan, as you said, they had already started dubbing the show in Canada. How was it, as an actor, trying to jump into an already started story? Because, you got to tell Goku's story from the start later on. How was that compared to jumping in as Gohan in the middle of the story?
I just showed up and followed direction. I actually had zero idea that the show had ever been dubbed before in English. All of this information came many, many years in. It was kind of just like a job where you just show up, you deliver lines, you go one line at a time. Sessions were anywhere between 1 and 6 hours, depending on your the voice count, the line count for your particular character. So we went from line to line. So I didn't know until years later that it was actually a Japanese anime and that we were dubbing in English, and that we had picked up where the Canadian dub left off. I found all of this out a long time into my career. So for me, I didn't know I was necessarily jumping in on anything. I wasn't asked to mimic anybody or voice match anybody. It was a voice that was constructed from scratch. And then from there on, it was just a matter of keeping that consistent.
Yeah, and you played Gohan and then also played Goku. Did you have to audition for Goku, or is that like, oh, you already have Gohan, it's a similar voice in the original, so you just get to keep Goku as well, or did you have to audition again for Goku?
I did audition officially for the voice of Goku in Dragon Ball. The director kind of already had an idea of what my range was, and I believe it's possible that the Canadian actress was also, I know she was also a vocalist, and we had similar types of ranges, and I believe she voiced, maybe she just voiced Gohan, but basically I just came in for what I thought was a session and started voicing Goku based on direction, and at that point I realized, okay, this show is a different, it's a series, but it's related to Dragon Ball Z in the sense that it came before it.
Yeah.
So I just started voicing based on direction, higher pitch, different type of attitude of the character had a completely different background. So I just kind of followed the direction and jumped in on it. And next thing you know, I was the voice of Goku in Dragon Ball.
Oh yeah. What has been some of the biggest challenges playing Goku and Gohan, like acting-wise, voice-wise? Like, how has it been doing those characters for now quite a lot of years?
The main challenge for me is that I was mostly a stage performer involved in theatrical productions that are live with an audience, especially with Vince Vance and the Valiants. We were constantly changing costumes. There was a lot of choreography, a lot of skits and variety type things that were going on. So I was thinking when I went in naturally that I was performing and that someone was hearing and seeing me, when in all actuality it was just being, it was just my voice. So early in, I had to realize that it didn't matter what it looked like. It didn't matter what facial expressions I had. It didn't matter if I was moving around or wearing a costume. It was simply just all of the acting had to be, pushed through the voice only.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like just switching modes and developing that etiquette for voice acting and dubbing as opposed to performing for a live audience. So I wasn't performing for the director. So, I learned pretty quickly, especially since I'd already done some work with Chuck E. Cheese and Jimmy Toys, that it didn't matter. So it was a matter of really channeling the acting experience and delivering lines with that experience and really getting into the mode of what's going on in the scene. And I relied on the director for a lot of the setup of the story because we jumped around from line to line. We weren't watching the show as we were doing it other than matching flaps for the dub. So that was kind of the biggest challenge. And then just really breaking down the fact that, you might be making funny faces or things that you feel like aren't really attractive. Well, it didn't matter, but to get the best out of the voice, sometimes that had to transpire. And so it's just a matter of switching modes of being a live, performer in front of an audience versus really nobody at the time. So that was kind of a challenge. And then, of course, voicing Gohan in the Cell Saga was quite a bit of strain and really challenging on my voice. But I strongly feel that being a vocalist and singer for so many, since I was a child, that made it easier to handle the demands of a low strained male manly voice, and that I knew how to take care of my voice and how to recover and what my body was telling me as far as like, okay, that's too much or not too much, or let's do this again. And thankfully, back when we were recording, a lot of the strenuous material, the screaming and yelling and power ups, and a lot of the big battle scenes were done at the end of the session. So there were some days that I was there all day, with a lunch break, of course, and then we would just blast it all out at the end of the session. And sometimes I would get a day off in between sessions when there was a lot of lines, and that really helped a lot to kind of break them up and not go back to back.
Yeah. So as you said, you played Gohan, and you had, especially in the Cell Saga, it's a deeper, more gruff voice. What were some of the other differences between Gohan and Goku? Was it like mostly vocal performance, or how did you think about acting for those two characters? They're related, but they're not the same, right?
Right. Father and son as boys. For me, I just had to channel not just a different voice that was unique, but also, really work on the acting part of it, being that they're completely different characters. So starting with Gohan, it was definitely more raspy. They actually asked me to be raspy. I know some of my fans are like, "Why are you so raspy?" And it's like, I'm following direction. I initially, when I auditioned, gave them a voice that was not quite so raspy and was probably, looking back, probably a lot like the Goku of Dragon Ball, that I've delivered since then. They wanted it to be raspy and a little gruff, so I added some rasp like this. Don't hurt my daddy. And that's what they wanted. So when it came time to do Goku, was told, hey, higher pitched, chipper, fearless, and just kind of like no rasp, a little clearer, just a little higher pitch like this. A lot easier to do than the other one. There might be a little rasp that kind of peeks in here and there, but for the most part, it was a brand new character. So we made sure to make sure it was unique and different, and that there was people could hopefully tell the difference. And if there were some similarities, that was okay because they were related.
Yeah. So you've been a part of the Dragon Ball story. Like, you've done Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, and now you've done Daima, and there's movies and games and a lot of material. Do you have any favorite projects or like favorite moments from the Dragon Ball franchise that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy using my voice and really challenging myself to make it sound unique and to really channel the character through the voice. So I really enjoy all of it. I love to work. I'm very big on work ethic and, making sure that what I'm doing is not just thrown away. It's like something that's extremely important to me, and it's important to, the project, for it to be, as good as possible or as realistic as possible. But I enjoyed, I enjoyed voicing both of them, even though I wasn't in very often because we would do so much material in one session. So it'd be months and months and months. So there, you couldn't just do that unless you were cast in like a large amount of shows or you were a director that was there, every day, Monday through Friday. But I specifically enjoy singing with a character voice. And I did a lot of that with the Jemmy Toys. And I wrote some novelty songs, kids songs. There was a time there in the mid 90s that I was working with a radio program, a company called TM Century. And I got involved with parodies and jingles. I was a big Weird Al fan. So I was writing parodies of songs that I liked and changed the lyrics. So I was kind of already doing that as a kiddo. And so I really enjoyed writing parodies and then going into writing novelty songs for kids and then performing the song in various kid voices. So for me, that was like, I think in the grand scheme of things was something I could do that was a little more unique than just voice acting or just singing. So combining them together and really making it sound, legitimately like a character. I started, with the parodies where the songs are already written and you just change the lyrics and then going in and try to sing like the original singer, but the lyrics are different and it, puts a spin on things and makes it comedic. So I got a little experience of each thing by combining some different parts of the aspects of my voice and what types of sounds and that I can do with my voice. So knowing my voice very well as a kid and growing up and constantly using my voice and getting in trouble in class for talking, I have a really, natural feel for what my voice is capable of. So another thing that went on in the career was I was cast as East Kai by random. It was all random because I was already in the session recording for Gohan and the character was kind of thrown at me. Hey, what do you think about this character? And I threw out a voice of East Kai. I thought, oh my, I'm the queen and I will win the gold. And because the voice sounded completely different from Goku or Gohan, I got cast. And it was just a random thing. I was already there and we had a few minutes left of the session. So every once in a while, especially back then when the talent pool was much smaller and a lot of us did multiple voices. I think I counted like 17 voices that I did in Dragon Ball Z. Whether it be an elderly woman, oh yeah, I might have done. I think I did a voice reporter. Now, where are you guys from? And some different ones like that. I did a German English teacher. Please open your textbooks to the page 24. So I was able to do, a lot of us were able to do multiple voices, and for me, that was so much fun because it was, ultimately the challenge is to sound completely different if you are to be cast in different roles. And that was the goal with Funimation and therefore with myself, because we didn't want any confusion. There probably was some confusion. There's a jillion characters, but back in the day, that's kind of how it went down. And it's like, we were already there. I already made the drive in about an hour away. Let's see if we can do, deliver something completely different. And so that was kind of a lot of my fans don't realize I'm a singer first and foremost, and a lot of them don't realize I voiced East Kai either in Baby Trunks. Also, there's some anime themes that we were working on in around 2000, where a show band, the one that I was actually singing with on several of their albums, Brave Combo, the leader of the band who also wrote the songs for our original project came in and was asked to dub some of the anime themes in English, but lyrically. So I got to work directly with him on the Japanese translation of the lyrics for the Japanese theme.
Oh, really?
Made it, yeah, a lot of people don't realize this went down. This was not a paid project. I was there strictly, kind of on an intern basis to be involved in the creative process, which taught me a whole lot. And since I had experience writing songs and writing parodies, I was able to kind of channel that and move it into creating lyrics from Japanese translations into English to where it flowed like a melody and kind of had a rhyming scheme like regular, English songs.
Yeah.
And learned a lot from that. I was actually cast to sing, I think about 7 of them. And then I was also asked to help bring in other talents so that they weren't all sung by the same person. Sometimes we had a male, mostly females, but I knew a lot of female singers. I'd worked with countless female singers since I was, just out of high school. So I had lots of references to bring in and then help direct those singers as well. And that was a completely unique experience, and I learned a lot from that.
Awesome, awesome. You talked about in the beginning when you were on the audition for Dragon Ball, you kind of didn't know what it was. Was it an anime? What is it? It was just, I guess, just a job at that point. When did you realize how big Dragon Ball actually is, and how has that affected you, like afterwards?
Well, it's nothing short of amazing. It kind of happened in steps. Like I was singing with my show band Vince Vance and the Valiants, and we went to Europe right after my mom passed away, and we had gone to Europe in Italy, Spain, and Greece for a naval base tour in the summer of 2000. While I was there, in my hotel room on one of my channels, Dragon Ball Z was playing, and it was dubbed in Italian, and I was able to hear the Gohan voice in Italian, which blew my mind. I saw merch in the souvenir shops in Italy with Dragon Ball Z and manga and sweatshirts and T-shirts and all kinds of stuff, figurines, and that's when I was kind of like, wow, this is really popular. And from there, it just was, little nuggets here and there. Burger King ran a special where Dragon Ball Z characters, little figurines that lit up, were given with all the kids' meals. And that was, I think, 2000 and 2001. And then from there, I just saw it more. I saw more merch in the stores and saw it in the toy stores, collectible stores. When I was doing my appearances, signing autographs, I would see, vendors with booths with Dragon Ball Z merchandise. And, over the years, I started to realize this was a much bigger deal, and it was a much more popular franchise than I had ever known. And with each year, I learned more and more, and the fans would write to me and they would tell me these things, and I would learn. A lot of it, really more than ever, is even now. I mean, especially coming back for Daima, that the franchise is much bigger than a lot of us could ever have imagined. And there's such a deep respect and homage to Akira Toriyama, the creator and artist of Dragon Ball Z. And I only just recently learned that the manga came out in 1984 when I was just a child. And so they hit their 40th anniversary last year from the manga, and next year will be the 40th anniversary from when Dragon Ball aired for the first time in Japan. So we're talking 40 years. That's most of my life. So I've just learned over the years from the fans and from what I see, and merchandise in stores and at Comic Cons and pop culture events. That's when I kind of realized, wow. And then the Funko Pops came out in 2016, and it's like, what are Funko Pops? And I hadn't voiced a lot between 2008 and till I auditioned for Dragon Ball Daima. So I had finished GT, and then my characters all grew up. So I was out of the scene for 16 years, not by choice, but but my characters grew up, and so that was a even bigger exciting thing to realize, that it's still big, it's still going. There's so many voice actors involved, so many creative content creators that are involved, and it's amazing. I'm very, very humbled by it, and to be asked back by Toei Japan to come in and voice Goku Mini for the nostalgia is a dream come true. It's something I'd never really thought would happen, because some of these directors go different directions, and then the talent has grown, and the Funimation was purchased by another big company, and then now it became Crunchyroll, and now it's just a whole different animal. And there's so much more competition and so many more people going to voice acting, and anime is now mainstream, which is super exciting. I love that I had a part in it so very many years ago.
Yeah, and you mentioned getting to come back for Daima. How did that happen? You mentioned Toei Japan was part of that decision?
Yes. The phone call came in for me to come in to audition for something. I didn't know what it was, and when I showed up for the audition, it was Goku Mini for Dragon Ball Daima, which I hadn't even known was in production. Apparently, they had announced it was in production October of 2023, and I'm sorry, 2023. I'm getting the years mixed up because it's 2025. Yeah. So I hadn't heard about it because I was kind of out of the scene, working on different projects and doing appearances all over the United States with signing autographs and doing meet and greets with fans at different pop culture events and anime events and comic stores. And I was kind of focused on that. And so when I got called in, I was like, this is great. I have no idea what I'm doing or what we're going to work on. So when came in, it was for the voice of, young Goku again. And then I found out a little bit more about the show and what they were doing. And about a week later, they called and solidified the deal that I would be back as Goku Mini in the new series Dragon Ball Daima.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how it happened. And Toei Japan, Akira Toriyama's legacy, all these factors were the consideration for how they were going to go about the casting. It's an honor. They also listened to the fans on social media, and they kind of took in kind of what the fans were saying about various voice actors voicing different characters and the nostalgia of the voices that they grew up with and things like that. So I'm sure that had something to do with it.
Yes. So how has the dubbing process changed from you did it back in the beginning to now voicing Daima? I'm guessing it's pretty different, or how much is similar, how much is the same, how much has changed?
The only thing that's the same is you do go in person. There was a time during COVID where some of us were doing a little bit of remote work.
Yeah.
But that's kind of still a thing with different studios, depending on their projects and who they have chosen for different projects. But for me, it was similar in the sense that I drove in and did all of the work in person with headphones and a script. Back in the day, we had a music stand, paper scripts, headphones, an old style TV that we would watch to match flaps while we were recording. And it was a much slower process. We were as efficient as we could be, and that was important to be efficient and on a time schedule. But now the booths are larger. It's a completely different building. It's technology is, they're on top of technology more in the sense that there's no more paper. There's no more. It's all on a flat screen through computer. And it's also a little bit of a quicker process in the sense that we go from line to line a lot quicker because it's computer based, so they can just kind of zip around. And if you don't deliver the line the way that you thought would be good, you just do it again, and they can slide it into place. So you kind of develop a rapport with the director and the ADR director in the sense that you start to kind of get a vibe for how they work and how the talent works, and then we just kind of get into a groove, and we take one line at a time. So some of it is similar, but a lot of it has changed.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at a time span from 1998 to 2024 and now 2025. So a lot has changed. There's a lot more anime, a lot more directors, a lot more voice talent.
Yeah.
A lot of people are moving to this region to get into voice acting, specifically anime at Crunchyroll. So yeah, it's just a lot has changed. It's been a good 26 years of time that's passed.
Amazing. And it must be pretty special to now work with people who were fans of your work and are now in the business themselves.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like the director was a big fan of the show, Jonathan Rigg. I'm meeting a lot of other voice actors at the pop culture events and anime events on the weekends, and how some of them were inspired by anime and various, voice actors of their childhood, which I can relate to because I definitely had my favorites as well when I was watching cartoons as a child, and, all the music I listened to. We all have a unique nostalgic experience as to what we grew up with and what was available to us. And some people, back in the day, you had to watch it when it came on, and there was kind of no DVRs. And so it was like, I hear stories, so these amazing stories of kids that are like, I ran home from school as fast as I could and ran into my room and shut the door and watched Dragon Ball Z. and nobody was allowed in my room, and that was the only time I could see it. And some of them had VHS tapes. At the time when we were recording, the VHS tapes were being released and distributed. So it's a big reward to kind of hear that feedback and talk about how, you're the voice of my childhood. I hear that a lot. And a lot of other anime voice actors that started around that time and previously probably get a lot of the same, feedback.
Well, just to add one more to the list, Stephanie, you're the voice of my childhood as well. So thank you very much.
Clean your room right now.
Oh.
What's funny that you said that is I'm now, I refer to myself now as an animom, mainly not just because a lot of the kids that grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, they're all, most of them 30s, 20s and 30s. I wanted children, wasn't able to have any. So I've just kind of adopted this whole like, well, I have kids all over the world that watch Dragon Ball Z. Those are my kiddos. So now I call myself Animom or Anime Auntie. So I kind of feel like that's kind of like a way to channel that motherhood, that nurturing motherhood that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah. Awesome. So now that you're back as Goku Mini, you've also gotten to voice act in the games again, like Sparking Zero, Kakarot, Xenoverse. How different is playing or dubbing a video game as opposed to Daima itself or the older series?
Yeah, first of all, it's a different studio. It's in a different part of town. It's a different director. But the studio setup is similar. It's still done by computer. There is, we have a really high quality microphone with a pop screen on it, and you follow direction and you just go to. It's similar in the sense that you go to line to line. You do one line at a time. If there's any heavy, strenuous battle scenes or screams, it's easier for the director to jump around in the script as far as what needs to be recorded, and they can save that to the end of the session. And if you strain your voice a little bit, it's not going to affect your dialogue. There's always at least 2 hours, sometimes 3, and I've done as long as 4. Nowadays, the sessions tend to be shorter. Not only is it a more efficient process, especially with seasoned voice actors, but it really does allow for your voice to recover if you're doing anything strenuous. So I say back in the day, we did sometimes 1 hour or 2 hours. During the Cell Saga, I was there all day. It just depended on the line count. But now there's not usually a full day of recording for one voice actor. Then that's just out of courtesy to allow their voice to recover and not overwork anybody, so that we definitely want the consistency. So if that means we take a break or we just do a shorter session, we do that. But as over time, if you're a seasoned voice actor and you're in your zone and you're in the groove, you finish what needs to be done within the designated time, because they've got that down to a science. It's like, well, we need this many characters, this many dialogue, we need this many pickups, we need this many screams, we need this many battle yells, and this many reactions. And then they kind of calculate how much time it would take for each actor to come in. And then if the time runs out and you're done, you stop it, stop your time, and then they rebook you for another session, maybe the next week or 2 weeks later, depending on the deadlines and when they need to get the material to the right people. And then it goes to post-production. And if there's anything that gets missed, they have somebody that checks out, listens to it to make sure if there's any mistakes or anything doesn't sound consistent, we go back in for what they call pickups.
Yeah.
So it's similar in a lot of ways. It tends to be a little more difficult just because you're voicing for a video game, and there has to be all kinds of different lines recorded at different lengths, at different in levels of intensity. So you're kind of doing a lot of repeat work, and then you might do a line and then do it again like 7 different ways. Like I might say Kamehameha really, really slow, and then by the end of that section of lines, it's like and it's longer, and then in some of the video games we've actually been able to dub to picture, not all of it, most of it not, but some of the video games have already been released, so this is just a matter of recording for a DLC so that people that already have the game can utilize the Dragon Ball Daima characters. So
Yes.
it's all kind of like it's pretty straightforward and easy for me because I've been doing it so long. It's kind of like you go in and you follow direction and you deliver your lines, and then we're kind of done at that point. And then it's just up to the director and those involved in post production if anything else needs to be done. And once you're done, then we just move on to the next one. So I haven't heard from anybody in a while now, but we did complete, I think, 4 or 5 games. So hopefully there'll be more. And who knows what's going to happen next year? Maybe there'll be some more Daima. I don't know if the characters will be minis anymore. That might not ever happen again. I hope it does. I hope they consider doing some movies or some offshoots. So we're all just kind of waiting to see when the
We'll have to
announcement will be
cross our
made.
fingers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited that it's gone 40 years. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, the fans, most of the fans that are really devoted to the show, really, they always want more. So,
Yeah.
yeah, The- we'll see what happens. I'm excited.
Yeah. You mentioned parts that were more straining on your voice. I'm guessing one of those parts in Daima was getting to play Goku as a Super Saiyan 4 with red hair and stuff, which, in GT, Sean Schemmel, the adult Goku, got to do that part. How was it finding your Super Saiyan 4 voice, and how was that process?
That was amazing. I was really excited to see Super Saiyan 4 Goku Mini for the very first time. That was like, wow, mind blown. So for that voice in the dialogue in the 20 episodes, I'm in, I think, episode 2 through 18. Goku Mini Super Saiyan 4 doesn't really say anything in the actual dub of Dragon Ball Daima, the episodes. What kind of threw me for loops is when we went in to do the voice acting for Dragon Ball Daima.
Sparking Zero. Yeah.
Yes, in the video games. We did a few video games where there wasn't any Super Saiyan 4, and then all of a sudden Super Saiyan 4, and then he has dialogue. So that kind of caught me off guard. Well, like, what's he going to sound like when he speaks, as opposed to just being, as opposed to being a very animalistic warrior. I was in contact with Sean Schemmel through text. I hadn't seen him in many, many, many years. But we were both very dedicated to the project, and we wanted to make sure our concepts of where we were going to go with Super Saiyan 4 were in alignment. And that was a really good thing, because we both kind of already had an idea of where we were going to go with it. And he came in and recorded his lines prior to me, because he's out of state, so he had to do his first. And so along with the direction and then the conversation I'd had with Sean, as well as what my idea of where the character would go with that voice, kind of stemmed from all of that combined. So when it came time to do the dialogue, I remember saying, "Hey, listen," to the different director, Damon Mills. I said, "Hey, this is a big deal. This is Super Saiyan 4 with dialogue. Okay, like, we need to make sure we know where we're going to go with this voice, and then stick with it and keep it consistent." And so we took the time to develop that voice. That was really important to me. And then we came up with what that voice was going to sound like, which was going to be obviously not as relatable. He's, very intense, lots of grit, lots of gravel. And I would just think Dragon Ball Z. I would think so. Goku in his most intense animalistic form, and I kept thinking like beast and like a big powerful gorilla monkey, jumping around and prancing around, in battle. And that's kind of where it all began and how it developed from there. But that was a really big deal to me, months later, when I had finished all of Dragon Ball Daima, and all of a sudden here I'm in a video game situation where Super Saiyan 4 is not just powering up and delivering battle screams. He's actually speaking, because the video game player of Super Saiyan 4 is now a choice that they can make of all the different characters that they picked when they're making the video game. So they had to have dialogue for Super Saiyan 4, but that was kind of like a curveball.
Yeah.
I took the challenge and was very happy to do it. Don't get me wrong, but I wanted to make sure that was really good, and that the voice I came up with for the dialogue was spot on, and that really made sense for that character.
Awesome. So, as you probably know, the Japanese voice actor for Goku, since the very first episode, is named Masuko Nozawa, and she has been Goku since, for 40 years, and she's almost 90 now. And you've gotten to hear her voice, I guess, like for most of your career as Goku and Gohan. How has her Goku and Gohan inspired how you work as Goku and Gohan?
Oh, that's another thing that's kind of different. Like back in the early days, there was no voice reference, there was no line to mimic. We didn't hear anything in our headphones prior, unless somebody had recorded before us and there, was already in the file and we could listen and respond to it. That's one thing that did change that I forgot to mention is now, whether you're recording an anime episode or an anime video game, for the most part, the Japanese counterpart is played along with the motion of the picture, so you can kind of watch it first and get an idea of what's going on. By no means do I mimic the original Japanese actor's voice, but it does give me an idea of where she's going with her interpretation, and then therefore I could kind of mold that instantly into how I'm going to deliver the line, right after that. So it definitely helped. And there's just such a different culture, and the way it's kind of funny to listen to how she would deliver lines of getting hurt or battle, kind of battle wounds. It's like, there's all these different things that the Japanese do and refer to for like pain, whereas we're more like, or whatever it is. So I made sure not to mimic. That was never the goal, but it definitely helped me realize kind of what was going on in the scene and how she delivered her line. And it helped me kind of capture that unique innocence of Kid Goku, only this time Goku is in a young body, but he's technically an adult in that young body. So that's another thing I had to remember, that Kid Goku is Goku Mini now. He's an adult, transformed into his younger form. And so that was something that I had to keep in mind, just like with GT. It's like it's not firsthand knowledge. He's not really a child. So I really hope that the acting chops were utilized and came through conveying the lines with all of that.
Awesome. Well, I definitely enjoyed it, and I think many others enjoyed having you back in Dragon Ball as well. So finishing up, is there anything you would like to say to fans of Dragon Ball?
Love you guys so much. I owe so much to you guys. Your loyalty, your support, all throughout all these years has meant the world to me. It's meant the world to me in my professional, my professional life as well as my personal life. I'm really, really grateful for all of the support and all of the love that I've received over the years. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I am an Animom and I will write you back. If you go to stephanienadolny.com and you have a question, or you want to DM me through Instagram, Stephanie Nadolny, feel free to do that. I will answer your questions. And I hope you enjoy the music. There's a lot of anime themes on there from Yu Yu Hakusho. Sayonara Bye Bye was the first one I ever recorded, which I think might be the most popular of the ones I've sung. Case Closed, I did a couple for that show, as well as Kitty Grade opening and closing theme, and those were really fun, and I'd love to do more of that. We'll see what happens.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, Stephanie.
Thank you. Love you guys. Come at me.
Yeah!